ably assisting with transmitting our meeting over channels 24, 79, and YouTube Live. So we're very fortunate to have a very experienced cameraman in Don Conway. Okay, so we're now out of our executive session, and our first application is ED1 for the BOE, and ED1 has now changed that it is simply the building monitor program for $619,800, and this is the Board of Education. So do we have any questions that we'd like to ask now that we're outside of the
Should we move it first?
executive session, or would you like to move it first?
Just to be consistent, I'll let Leslie move it.
No. I'll move ED1, the building monitor program, for $619,800.
Okay, so. And is there a second? So Laura Erickson has seconded that? And do we have any additional comments that we'd like to make in the public session? Laura?
So just for the public record, I understand that there was new information that came to light, that there was an issue raised perhaps by LiUNA, and this was discussed at RTM last night in the committees. Can you just give us an update? I understand there was a meeting yesterday that took place, where you think you are and what your path forward is with signing this contract?
So our new HR director, go ahead. Sorry. Our new HR director, Dr. Jonathan Budd, met with Mary Pepe from the town so that she could introduce him to the head of LiUNA. They had a good conversation yesterday. We expect those conversations to continue. As with, all of our unions, our goal is always to work collaboratively with them, and we're hoping that we can find a resolution so that meets the interest of both parties. And we'll be doing that as quickly as we can.
Okay, any other questions? Nope. Leslie?
I just, only because I think it's important to get on the record and get out in the public. We're talking about filling a gap that has been identified in terms of monitoring the building safety at the Board of Ed in the elementary, middle, and the Winrose buildings, not the high school building, and that the solution being proposed in consultation with the chief of police is to hire building monitors, if you will, whose primary responsibility will be to monitor the existing cameras and the feed of those cameras, monitor the front doors and the access to the buildings, and periodically confirm that the building itself is secure, and that those are functions not currently covered by existing staff. Am I understanding it correctly?
That's correct.
And I guess I should just add, since we are in public, just to take a step back, this is something that we've been talking about as a Board of Ed over the summer. Clearly, a lot of parents, as a parent, and our community is very concerned about increasing the security of our campuses, and we're sort of taking a three-pronged approach in doing that.
And just, in terms of the financial appropriateness of the proposal being suggested, the existing employees' scope of responsibilities cannot be adjusted, or you don't see how they can be adjusted to cover the security or the safety of the building sufficiently.
No, our existing staff could not do what this
And
would do.
and this proposal is comparable, really, to what almost every other district in Fairfield County has adopted already. Is that also
Yeah,
correct?
I'll say the chief did his diligence on that, yes.
All right, without getting into the specifics of it, okay, I'll let
Nisha?
Yeah, I know Uvalde is kind of what propagated the discussion for this, particular project. And I don't know, I don't have very specific information as to what the other districts have done in the past or are currently doing, but just kind of looking at public information, I saw New Canaan introduced monitors in about 2013, about a decade ago. So just want to get a sense from you, is this something that GPS has looked at before? Why is it not already a part of our budget? Newtown was a long time ago. Is this something that's just coming up? Obviously, I know what initiated it today, but why isn't this already a part of our school budget?
Yeah, I mean, we always try to, it's a concern. I think that we're seeing increased concern throughout the country and certainly locally. In executive session, we talked about some of the increased comps in the area. I'd say every town seems to be going in increased security direction. And, we're just in a different place than we were a few years ago. I think the reality is the national situation has changed and it's impacting us locally. And like I said, as a parent, I'm concerned, and we heard from a lot of parents over the past, since the spring, since the last horrible situation, and that there continue to be seemingly horrible situations, that they're not comfortable with the current safety situation at our schools. And over the summer, the chief of police with our team worked on coming up with a solution that they hope will address the concerns and keep our kids safe.
So just to be clear, this is not something that you have looked at in the past? And
I don't know, I've only been on the board
So,
do you know?
I actually, while I was a lieutenant, submitted a proposal to get an SRO at Greenwich High School. And we actually had a federal grant, and we returned the money because there was a hue and cry that we have an officer at the high school who might have was wearing his uniform, which included a weapon. So we returned that money, and we resubmitted and had a new discussion about that. And I'm sure that if we tried to take the school resource officer out of the high school now, it would be a much different public response. We constantly look at it, and as we discussed earlier, that we're evaluating the schools, or evaluating the personnel's response to the schools, not just the police, but also the principals and the other support staff. We have currently 2 school resource officers at the high school, and up until a few years ago, we only had 1, but when we started to transition from 1 officer to have him learn the duties for the next one, the 2 school resource officer position really became the more acceptable item. That we've also increased the number of security at the high school, but not at some of the other schools. When there was a specific concern at different buildings, we've addressed that, and we currently, we revisit the school safety on a regular basis. We talk about the principal training that we did over the summer, then the tabletop exercises we did in the last 2 or 3 weeks with both public and private schools, and then the training that the officers go through in active shooting. So it's again, the public demand has changed, and the concern for safety with those other events that have occurred since Sandy Hook.
I had just a comment on I know we talked about this in the executive session, but one thing that, is public is that there were 2 firms that came out and bid on the monitoring program, and, we chose Arrow, or we've selected Arrow or the Board of Ed has selected Arrow. Can you just, for public record, kind of discuss what the 2 different options were and why you all went forward with Arrow? And I'm just the backdrop, sorry, also from the RTM meeting last night, there were some concerns that came up specifically about this security firm. So if you could just help us alleviate some of those concerns.
Sure. Like I said, there were 2 firms that came back. One was significantly more than the other. The chief was familiar with the other one, the more expensive one, but we thought it was appropriate, and they went out and completed diligence. They did checks on the companies. They looked at their references, the chief along with the administration, and they felt comfortable that while this is a lower cost, a more competitive bid, that this is still a very good choice.
Well, I would like to express my concern that the issue between LiUNA and the schools wasn't raised initially by the schools, and it's something that we've had to ask and pursue. I'm always very concerned about security, whether it's my own or school children or anyone else, so I'm very concerned that we implement this program. However, I do feel that the schools should have brought their, human resources officer, even if this person is new. And I would like a better handle and information from him on the progress that's being made on these contract related to the Lyuna contract. Again, I think that that would be very helpful. I mean, one of the issues here is, as we have discussed and as we all know, the BET can't condition these funds on, an agreement between Lyuna and schools. And again, this is their union, not the town union. So at this point in time, I'm not comfortable with this particular aspect. That could change over the next week, depending on what kind of progress is made between and with Dr. Budd and obviously our superintendent and their Lyuna union. So anyway, I'd like to make that comment. I think it's critical that we keep the same excellent relations with our unions that, we've had for a very long time. So that makes me hesitant on this, even though I remain very concerned about whether it's school security or all of our security. Leslie.
Thanks. So this request clearly has some hurdles in front of it. Certainly, 2 of the RTM committees did not vote in support of it, but I think some of that is a lack of information and knowledge. They don't have the ability to have an executive session. They don't understand the pros and cons of what we have, and it's always easy to see the problems than it is to see the advantages. I'm a little concerned, and I should add, typically the BET is equally as cautious, right? Unless we have everything answered, we don't like to move forward. But I'm really concerned about a delay in funding and considering the proposal that's been presented to us, both by the superintendent and our chief of police, after understanding what risks there are in our current buildings and what other communities have done. And we're talking about building in a month delay in trying to move forward with anything probably, and then it takes another month for whatever the firm that we've selected to get up to speed to be able to provide services. And I just don't think that's an adequate response. I had some of the same questions that everybody else had on this regarding, one, how the issues with our staffing will work out in my unit, that those are open questions, but we're hearing that our superintendent and her staff are very aware of it and are going to work clearly to resolve those as best they can. We asked a lot of questions in executive session about the qualifications of the selected firm, and again, we do at some point need to revert to the guidance of our experience and trained people in these particular areas. I'm not sure I'm more qualified than the chief to understand the level of services and the quality of the services I'm going to get. And so we've asked those questions. So I understand the hesitancy in moving forward with this, but I just am not comfortable with the alternative, which is not supporting this at this time. We can't condition the funds, but we certainly can, I think, be able to rely on our superintendent and the board chair to move forward, understanding our concerns and communicate with us as the issue evolves. It's always easier to say no than it is to say yes, I think. And I just want to make sure that it's certainly not a decision that's made without risks. Clearly, I get that, but most of what we decide don't have risks either. So just in response to to your concerns, Leslie, I understand them, but I think I come out in a different place.
Nisha?
Yeah, I'm just gonna, so yeah, I guess first I'll start by saying I think security is the most important thing in our schools, and I think it needs to be a very high priority item. And for one, I'm quite disappointed that this is not something that the board has not taken up before. And I heard all the comments earlier about the other resource officers, but this specific program of having campus monitors, I think, is a good one. And I think I know other districts are doing it, and you all have come in front of us for various items, and I think I would have hoped that this was a higher priority than that. That being said, the concerns that came up yesterday with the firm that has been selected through consultation with Chief Hebe as well, it looks to me, and kind of, Kathleen, what you confirmed today is that cost was the biggest driver in selecting that firm. So if cost were no option, perhaps a different option would have been selected, which is, of course, a real life problem to have, where you always have two different products and you have different costs. But for this particular one, I'd like to see more transparency and I know we requested the different proposals that came through. I requested them earlier this morning as well through purchasing. I did not receive. I'd just like to see who the two firms were and what the real cost difference was, just to make sure that we are making the right decision. And I do not think we should delay security ever, but considering this is something that I think should have been addressed a long time ago, I just need to make sure we get this right and we're going forward with the right firm and putting and if this is the right firm we come up with, because we've done all our proper analysis, that's fine. But I'd like to know more information about the other provider that I know the town has already utilized and perhaps is more expensive, but just to get full clarity on that.
So can I just say one thing? I have to say, like, my heart just was racing because I couldn't find my daughter for a second, and her brother got to her, and it just reminded me for a second, there is nothing like the fear of a parent when you're worried about your kid, and the emotion that has come around this continual world of school shootings. It's a different world, Nisha. I wish we were where we were 5-10 years ago, but the reality is we're not. And there has been more and more, things happening around the country, and I just think that that's why it's before us now, because it's come to us because it's community driven. That we have a lot of parents reaching out to us that are truly concerned. As for the choice and vendor, I relied on my experts in that case. I wasn't making the reference checks. I had the chief of police who knows to ask the right questions and the right security and what he's comfortable with in partnership with Tom Bobkowski. That's their job. I can't opine on who's the best for that. If that was what he talked to us about in executive session, our board voted 701 as a result with that recommendation. I'm still comfortable with that. But look, it's a year pilot, right? So if at the end of the year, let's hope things go well, because like you said, it's hard to measure because you hope things go well. And so I think that this is the best thing to do to move quickly and to satisfy the community, and let's assess at the end of the year. That's my final bit. I'm sorry, but I have to go get my kids.
Laura?
I don't know if Nisha's done.
Oh, I'm sorry, Anisha, did you?
I was just going to respond to Kathleen on her way
Yes,
out.
no,
but-
let Nisha.
That's okay,
finish
she's
and then
going on her
I'll-
way out, but the comment I was going to make is, when we see proposals for 600,000, 400,000, it's just nice to have the background information behind it, even if it's something, I know these are public RFPs, maybe they clearly are not public anymore, because I could not search for them, I did request them, I did not receive it, but even if it's something that you have to keep off the public site for confidentiality reasons, before a meeting like this, it would be nice for us to have the information in front of us, just to help us analyze and ask the right questions. It's very difficult to ask questions about some of these and this is not a dollar, I'll tell you, this is not a dollar number exercise for me right here. This is just information gathering on who the two firms were, what they proposed, why is one bid 2x than the other, and are we getting, all of this is worth nothing if we choose the wrong firm. So we got to make sure we get the right firm, and it would be nice for us to have the information that we need and that we requested.
Laura?
I just want to make a couple comments. We've had a long discussion. It's a fruitful discussion. I know that the Board of Ed and all the security experts and our chief have been very integrally involved in this whole business. But from a perspective of someone who entered the public schools in '99 and exited in 2016, I think the district has done a lot over the years. There's been a heavy investment in capital equipment, card readers, cameras, closing doors, reminding people not to put pieces of paper or rocks in the door to keep them ajar. We've invested heavily in training, not only these tabletop exercises that happen periodically. We've had a number of incidences over the years, many of which my kids were in, lockdowns, what have you. We've learned from those. We've had power blackouts. Now we know we have flashlights in the rooms. I mean, we've learned a lot. We've implemented not only the first SRO, which you're right, Chief Heavey, there was a lot of resistance to that at the time. Now we have a second SRO. We've expanded to the middle schools. We have the anonymous tips alert. And I think everyone is really cognizant. And I just want to note, while I'm very supportive of this program, I have every confidence that the issues being raised by some of the labor unions will be addressed appropriately. We can't wait, but this is not necessarily a savior, this program. It's still going to take all of us. We can't be fooled that this is really, the end of the discussion, because we all know, even when there are armed personnel at some of our locations across the country, it's not an even matchup. So I think this is a very positive step. I support it. I understand your concerns. And the last thing I would say is, while I do believe it's public for RFPs, the tabulation to be noted on the purchasing site, I'm not quite sure the proposals themselves are considered or posted. So they may be available in public, but I don't think they're typically posted. That's my only comment. Thank you.
So, again, I did send an email this morning at 9:20, and with my understanding that there was no resolution at the time between schools and Lyuna, and asked if there was no resolution prior to the 1:30 p.m. when we were going to begin our executive session, whether the BOE schools intent would be to withdraw the request for the building monitor program prior to public discussion. And I did ask that they provide direction and that would be most helpful. And quite frankly, it was disappointing that no response was received. So with that, I am going to, if we have no more comments, I'm going to ask to take a vote on this item. So we ready for a vote? Okay, so who wants to start?
I'll vote yes.
Leslie Moriarty votes yes. Laura, or do you want me to?
However, you're the chair. Are you recognizing me for a vote?
Yeah, I looked
vote
to you,
yes.
but- Okay, Laura votes yes. Leslie Tarkington is going to vote no at this time.
And we're only voting on the monitor program?
We're voting, I'm sorry, we're voting on ED1. The motion was for ED1, and the amount for the building monitor program is $619,800.
Yep, and I'm going to vote no on this until I have more information.
Okay, so that vote is 2-0, 2-0. So that motion fails.
Just, can I ask for a procedural question? The chair of the BET still can add it to his agenda with just the Budget Committee report of a
Exactly.
2-2 vote.
That's always the option of the chair, if the chair so chooses, correct? Absolutely.
Does the chair so choose, or does the chair not know?
I think that's the chair's responsibility, and I'd like to move to the next vote.
I would like to ask the question of the chair, through you.
Okay, well, that's fine. But, Mr. Ozesmere, do you plan to put this on the agenda for Monday night? Okay, fair enough. Again, it's totally the chair's option what the next steps are. So from there, I'm going to sort of take this a bit out of order in that I am going to do the next operating, which is now called PD1. And it is for additional Greenwich Police Department overtime for $411,000. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve that.
Okay, so Nisha, let me just write this down, PD1. Nisha made the motion to approve.
I'll second.
Leslie Moriarty has made the motion, seconded the motion. Is there any comment on this? So I'll comment. Oh, I'm sorry, Laura?
Just for the record, Chief Heavey, could you just tell us, so during the hours of this additional 3 patrols, how many cars will be on the road?
So the normal patrol allocation during the day is 11 off.
Can you turn your mic on? I'm sorry, just for the record.
So the normal allocation of police officers for patrol are 11 to cover the town. In addition, they have a supervisor, sergeant, and lieutenant. But this request will be for 3 officers who's under an operations order will be directed to monitor and provide additional security for the 15 schools. So they'll be, with the exception of the high school, because that's covered by the SRO, so it'll be east, west, and north. We already have 3 cars that provide that, and these officers, well, those positions would be filled in overtime to cover it. Would not be an additional hire, because we're just going to cover it with officers that are already in existence.
Anyone else have any comment? I think that I will make the comment that Chief has worked very hard in this program and to structure an excellent program where his department is participating with the schools using exactly the same number of officers, but providing this service through additional overtime. And so that's what we're approving with this.
My second interim ever in 11 years as chief. Just
I
add that to
think
the record.
the schools are used to interims, but thank you, Chief, for doing this.
Just to explain, for record keeping, it's going to your department, which is why it's coming under PD, not the Board of Ed's budget. But we understand that this is for a school purpose.
So shall I just take a vote now? Okay, so those in favor, I'll start with Laura.
Yes.
Laura Erickson is a yes. Leslie?
Yes.
Leslie Tarkington is a yes. Nisha?
What are we voting on? I'm sorry.
Oh, we're voting on the police department's
Overtime.
PD1.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I made the motion, so I forgot. Yes. Yes, I'm a yes. Yeah.
Okay, so that vote is 4-0-0. So we have a third application, which we call ED2, and that is the interim appropriation for security hardware in the amount of $400,835. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve that.
So that,
$400,835.
And I'll second.
Leslie Moriarty second, Nisha first. Nisha made the motion. Those in favor? I'll go with Leslie first.
Wait, let me just ask
Oh.
a question about the accounting.
Oh, I'm
only
sorry,
because,
I'm sorry.
Since it was pointed out that we moved security investment into the operating budget, I just want to confirm with Roland that we're doing this as capital because we believe they're depreciable assets, and that's why they're staying in capital. But this category is going to have both.
It probably will to some degree, but when we talk about additional doors and things like that for entrances, I mean, it's clearly capital. If this is a recurring item in the years, we can look at it at that time.
Okay.
I don't know if we are talking about additional doors, are we?
Yes.
District has standard for its hardware.
You might want to come to the mic now that we're on it.
Yes.
District has a standard for its,
You have to turn it on. Or maybe sit next to, in between.
Thank you. Thanks, Chief.
The district has a standard for its door hardware, which includes locks, door handles, crash bars, and along those lines. And the district also has a standard on its cameras and along those lines. So what we're talking here is just basic door hardware, intercom systems, and camera systems. There'd be no door replacement or anything along those lines.
We're looking at you, Roland.
Roland, I thought Roland already talked with Blaze and Dan, so, it gets confusing, right?
Keep in mind, this is still labeled as TBD as far as the account, so if,
The TBD is the project number, the capital project number.
assuming it stays in capital.
Yes.
You're still good with it being capital?
Yes.
Okay. I have no concern.
So let me just add, though, for also to make sure the public knows, that this is being funded out of the capital non-recurring account. We have two different choices, that or bonding. In this case, it's $401,000, basically. And this seemed like, given the life of this equipment and what it is, that this was a reasonable use of our capital non-recurring account. So, with that, are we prepared to take a vote? Laura?
Yes.
Laura Erickson, yes. Leslie?
Yes.
I'm a yes.
I'm a yes.
That's 400.
Can
So
I
thank you.
make one comment just for the meeting?
Sorry about that. Apologize.
The actions by the RTM, they're going to act on several of these individually, but the motions that were approved or talked about, both in the documents from the Board of Education, as well as amendments made by Education and Finance, still include TBD, to be determined. I don't think it's appropriate for the RTM to approve to be determined. They probably want to say to the accounts as approved by the BET. So I'm just saying that out loud so that someone, I did mention at Education Committee, they did take note of that they have to, their amendment should be modified for an account number, but if we make sure we follow through on that. Thanks.
I'd like to thank Dr. Jones and Chief Heavey, Tom Babowski, Blaise Leviton for attending our meeting and providing a lot of information. So we thank you. And hopefully, by next Monday, we even have more information. Assuming it's on the agenda, but I will just, I think any additional information or support from Dr. Budd would probably be constructive. Okay, with that, we will move to CC1, Conservation.
I'll make,
Welcome.
you want me to put the item on the floor?
Well, I was just going to welcome Pat Sesko, the Department Head for Conservation first, and so if you would like to,
I'll move the approval to use the DEEP Waste Reduction Grant in the amount of $5,228.
okay? Moved by Leslie, seconded by Laura. Do we have any discussion here?
Well, does Pat want to say?
Oh,
Yeah.
Pat, here's a good idea. We'll start with you, and you wrote a very nice memo.
Oh, great. So if that answers all the questions?
No, I think that the memo really it was circulated to the full BET, but since, we're here talking to the public, and we have Mr. Borsak in the back that was now waving to the public, that it would probably be helpful if you just give us some background in terms of what this is and why it's coming out of the Conservation Department, et cetera.
Sure. This is a new source of funding from DEEP. It is an outgrowth of the 5-cent surcharge that is applied to what people commonly call NIPS, which are those little alcohol bottles. And the purpose of the surcharge, as set forward by the state, is to return that money back to the towns. We get credit, or the grant is in the amount based on how many nips are sold in our town. So it varies from town to town across the state. For us, just a little over $5,000. The purpose of the money is to assist in litter management, debris, waste reduction as a whole, and the towns, it's at their discretion of how to apply those funds. In speaking with the Office of the First Selectman, Parks and Rec, DPW, and my department, which would be the logical places that that money might be used, it was determined that conservation would be best to steward those funds for this round, and work with Waste Free Greenwich to implement what was a pilot program, to expand that in our school systems for waste reduction. Julie Deschamps, who heads Waste Free Greenwich, has made significant strides in that pilot program with a 55% reduction in waste. And you think, okay, so what's the waste reduction? Getting organics out of our solid waste is critical. They weigh a fair amount, and they also, when it comes to waste to energy, they take more energy to keep the heat of the incinerators of our municipal waste up. So getting them out of our waste stream has value to us, as it saves us in revenue, or expenses rather, going to the incinerator. It's more sustainable in as much as we're taking organics and getting them out of our waste stream so that they can be composted and reused more productively. And it also is an education opportunity for our students to bring those practices back home, which certainly increasing opportunities to get organics out of our waste stream is important as a community.
Just, do you have any questions?
I do not have any questions right now, but I might if you go the other way.
Leslie, do you have any questions?
No, I do not.
Okay. So, do you have any questions, or I'll
I'll just make a comment. I mean, some of the information was distributed a little late this morning in advance of our meeting, but as I understand it, this is some grant money that is coming our way. This is the first usage of this program. This may not be what's coming down the pike later on, but this is an expansion of what is already proven to be a significant success story with the pilot program to reduce organics. One way we're going to reduce waste is to do what you're doing, sorting, organics, what have you. This is covered under the resolution. This is something that both DPW, which arguably would say, we could use some of this money for other things as well. They're in agreement that this is a good use of the funds. It meets the intent of the legislation. I think Waste Free Greenwich has been a very good partner with the town of Greenwich, so I applaud that we are rewarding success with more success, hopefully. So I think this is a very positive development, and I support it.
Okay. So, I think, quite frankly, do we have any more questions along here? I will make some comments, but, Harry, do you have any questions, or shall I ask your questions? So Harry, I did circulate this to all BET members, and Harry had a couple of questions, and I'll ask those as well as my own. Pat, so Harry asked, what is the ongoing operating cost of this program?
I'm going to invite Julie Deschamps up. She is from Waste Free Greenwich, and she'll have much better
So welcome,
finite
Julie.
information than me.
So what is the ongoing cost of the program? Since you're now the expert.
So basically zero at this point. It's just the cost of the sorting stations. So we have invested, our Greenwich Recycling Advisory Board has invested about a little over $2,000 in the sorting stations in 2019 at those 6 pilot schools. And now we're asking for additional sorting stations at 7 additional schools, elementary and middle schools. And so once those sorting stations are paid for, it's really the volunteers help train the students. I was at New Lebanon today doing just that. And then we have some posters, which the schools, school media centers provide. And I guess the second part of this is the organics hauling, and we have not done that yet. Many schools in Fairfield County do have organics hauling programs. Westport, Wilton, Rowayton Elementary, almost all the independent schools in Greenwich do, where they have the students separate food scraps in the cafeteria, and then they are put into toters, and they hire a hauler, an organics hauler, to take that to a licensed facility where the material is processed into compost. So we are asking to run a pilot at New Lebanon School in the spring at a cost of about $2,000. And that will kind of see what the successes are, what are the challenges, do we want to expand that? I'd also mention that there are, at some of the schools, outdoor composting bins, but there are some challenges with that, getting the material to the bins. So we are investigating this option to see if we can even pull more material out of our waste stream. And that would include the paper trays, all food scraps, not just fresh produce, which the outdoor bins are limited to. So this is just an opportunity to see what's in store of us for us in the future. What are the possibilities?
Thank you, Julie. And so I'm going to ask another question that was also asked of Harry, and I don't know whether Pat will pass on that question too. Who collects from the containers?
So as I understand it, the public schools contract with a private hauler, and so they collect trash and recycling on various days. If there's any compost currently, it is put into the outdoor bins, so that's only fresh produce, basically fruits and vegetables. And that's done by volunteers or teachers.
So now I'm going to ask a question of Pat. So Pat, why is conservation doing this and not the schools themselves?
Programs like this have been an outgrowth of our green schools. Conservation has long been partnering with the schools for public education, modifications of logistics in the school, whether it's the compost bins. This is just one more opportunity to partner with the schools. So in that regard, it's nothing new.
Thank you. So now I'm going to turn it to Pete. So these grants, all grants come in through finance, and this grant came in at some point in time, maybe during the summer or something. And initially, I think that Pete thought that this would go to the DPW, perhaps waste management, since what we're doing is taking things out of recycling, right, that would normally we would get paid for in the end. So it's fair to say that initially you said that, and that's, I'm not putting you on the spot anything more than that, but I do think that it's becoming more and more that the departments are kind of deciding how we're going to spend our money, and we have to begin to look at our budget. And Leslie and I were talking about this, I don't remember, maybe a month ago, but recently, about a totally different department that had made a decision to lower its, its age for program, for its lunch program. And so, when we approve budgets every year, we kind of expect the parameters of that budget, whether it's the grant money or the expenses, or at least I do, to kind of stay in place until we talk about these things at the next budget cycle. And, more recently, there's another example of a department sort of changing things. This both includes revenues and potentially increasing expenses without coming back to the BET. And, it remains my opinion that while these are really good things to do, I happen to be a recycling fanatic. So people know, me from seeing me at Holly Hill all the time. But I also think that there's a responsibility to kind of, look ahead and understand the budget and the precedent. Now, as I understand this program, it comes from more than one vendor, whatever we call these, distributor of these little nip things, and that it comes twice a year. That's what I read in the documents, correct? So we're talking about an ongoing revenue stream here, and we also know that recycling did ask for additional support for human resources and some other things to help them with their program. And quite frankly, this is also available, as I read it, for, storm drains and things like that. And I happen to be very sensitive about this. Pat knows what my area of town. And last night's storm, I thought was nothing until I went out this morning. And the town's put new, very large storm drains in some parts, but they're just like totally covered with debris. So I think there's lots of things that we need to talk to about how we should spend this money. And my own personal opinion is, I don't know whether we have a motion that it should go to DPW. No motions. But I do think that this probably is something that, whether it should be decided as an interim or looking at this money, whether this becomes part of our discussion, since it becomes an annuity stream over a period of time, to set up the right budget resolution, whatever people decide, and look at this annuity stream as how it should be handled during the budget cycle. So that happens to be my opinion at the moment. And so, I certainly support all of these aspects of, that are outlined in the surcharge and how it's to be used for environmental measures. So here's my comments. You have a question for me? I was confused. Do I have a question? Well, you said. No, I said, and then I said I'm taking the pressure off him. I just wanted to make sure he hadn't mentioned this. This has come in. But that money can sit there and in today's environment also earn, higher interest than we used to earn for our, money too. And we don't need to make the decision today. So whether we make it as an interim or in the budget cycle.
Pete has a response.
No, I really want to comment. Originally, this bill was passed a year ago, and the money's coming every 6 months. It's from the liquor wholesalers. It was two pieces. One was very small, one was over 5,000. I don't have any issue with the 5,228 and what we're doing now, but the question is, and to your point, or points, is that you're going to have a steady stream every April, May, or October, November.
Right.
And there should be a plan going forward as to what we're going to do with these monies going forward. So that's probably, and that's to Patty. We discussed this a week or two ago, and I learned that Pat was leaving shortly, and I believe she's got a vacancy underneath her. And my question was to Pat and to Ben downstairs is, who's going to take possession of this going forward every 6 months? Do we let it build up? Because some of the cost in there to whether it's recycling labor or a street sweeper, you're not going to get that kind of expense paid with a $5,000 receipt every 6 months. So my only comment was, and it's not to this one here today, was what are we doing going down the line as far as who's going to be coming forward every 6 months, and do we have a plan to spend it over the next set of years? That's it.
But it also could pay for the overtime for the people that need to go out and take care of those monstrous storm drains that now are totally
right-
covered with debris.
Right now, Pat Sesto's in charge, and she's going to make that decision because it's covered under the conservation budget resolution.
Well, we can take money in, as Karen is not here, she's in the law committee, to any department. It may fit under this resolution, but it also might fit under the deep resolution for the sewer plants in terms of the nitrification and denitrification. It just happens to have one convenient spot. But we don't need to have a resolution in order to accept money, too.
You do. The resolution only allows conservation to accept it. No one else can accept this right now. I mean, you could write another resolution to have Public Works or anybody, but conservation's the only one right now authorized to accept it.
Well, there's another resolution that says DEEP can accept certain things. I mean, the wastewater
But
plant.
that's specifically for sewer projects. It's also in the resolution for the sewer.
I don't know. I do think
If I
that
can make a
it's a
comment.
convenient spot because it's sitting there. But we could approve this anyway. We don't have to accept everything like this into that one, do we, Ron? I mean, to me, that's,
No, you could say, I don't want the money to go to the schools for this program. Say, come back with a different program.
right. Or we can or write a new resolution in February and have it for fiscal year '23 and for future, too. And in the meantime, it can sit there and earn interest. Is that right?
Can I make a comment?
Yes.
I mean, Leslie, what you're raising is a policy issue. It's not that, it sounds like this specific proposal you might vote for. I don't know what your final vote's going to be. I'd like to move forward on that. But you raise a policy issue on what span of control for the BET, which is how we spend money, but you're also moving into, on that determination, what's good for the public, what has other benefits besides the financial implication, and that's a broader discussion. And yes, we should have some of those at the budget committee, understand what the town is thinking and going forward and where they are, but I don't necessarily think that we don't have the authority, I think, to change the library fees, for example, that you referred to, or because that's a revenue, that's not an expense of what we collect and what we don't collect. The BET as a body can identify their opinion at certain points in time. But anyway, I think you're getting a lot on the table right there, and you have a policy issue. I don't think, I think we should move forward on this particular grant. This one is not set in stone going forward because this is a one-time acceptance and appropriation of these funds. Okay. All right?
So, are we ready for a vote then? Okay. Would you help me on who moved this one? Leslie moved it. Okay. Your vote?
I vote yes.
Laura?
Yes.
Nisha?
Do you want to vote first, Leslie? Or?
So I think that I will vote no.
Okay, I'll abstain on this one. I'm a little bit confused about what the issue that's being raised here on policy.
Okay.
It looks like to me that it is within the purview of conservation, but I
Okay.
have to yield to my chair here, but,
So-
so I'm going to abstain on this vote, yeah.
So the vote is 2-1-1, and that motion is passed. So the next one, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And so the next one we have is the fire department. FD1, approval to use a Fema grant. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I think that should be routine, that grant. And I'd make that part of my motion, but I won't
You
do
didn't
that.
make it as part of your motion, though.
I did or I didn't?
No, you
Sorry,
didn't.
I won't change that now. Provide whatever guidance we want to the chair. I would say routine. I don't know if, Leslie, given you voted against, I don't know.
Yeah, I'd say just because the vote is not 3-1 or whatever, I'd say it passed,
Right.
so I'd say it's non-routine. Or do you think you want it to routine? No, I think it does,
I think why don't we keep it non-routine, just so
Yeah,
we can have.
non-routine.
Yeah, we can have some conversation around
Okay,
it between.
but
now and
So
then.
the implication is that we're asking Pat and perhaps Julie to come to our meeting on Monday night? Is that
Is that what you
well, we're
want?
asking
what you
Pat,
want?
she's the department head.
right? But I think Julie asked a lot of questions. I don't know if other BET members might have the similar questions. so.
I would say that my concerns are only around the policy aspect of it. I have a great understanding of the program. I think it sounds wonderful.
Yeah.
I think it's really just
Okay.
around helping understand the policy, which we can maybe just work out between
So I'd say
all of us.
non-routine.
Yeah.
Okay?
Which means the chair gets to do what he wants to do.
Exactly.
Back to the chair.
Fire department. Okay, Charlie, you've been very patient, 3:41. That's very late. We had a long executive session, as you know. So we thank you for coming, and you are here, just give me 1 second to move to this sheet. So you're here to talk because you also got a FEMA grant, and so this is for $53,900. You can explain how it's divided up, and it's for the additional of personal protective equipment, washers and dryers at 2 of our firehouses, correct?
Yes.
Do you want to give us some more information about this, please?
Before he starts, can I make a motion to put it on the table to approve the
Okay?
approval to use $53,900 FEMA grant?
Yes. I'll second that one. For a change.
That's fine.
Okay, Charlie.
Okay,
Oh, I'm sorry, this is Charlie Ludwicki, our Assistant Fire Chief.
Shortly after my arrival in December, doing a quick assessment of what we have for abilities, one of the things I did notice was that our ability to properly wash gear, the PPE, to NFPA standard is a little lacking. From the memo, there's a very specific way to wash the gear to try to remove the carcinogens and contaminants while stopping the gear from degrading and going out of service way before we want, because we want it to last at least 10 years. Well, 10 years is its shelf life, and sometimes due to wear and tear, it's hard to even get it to that point. Currently, we have one 22-pound washer. The washer and dryer cycle for just 2 sets of gear, because that's all it can handle at a time, is about 3 hours. All told, we probably have 150 to 200 sets of gear, and if there's a emergency scene that requires decontamination of gear, we're probably looking at over a week of trying to get it done. So one of the things that I did was, I think I started on December 6th. This was due on the 19th. I was able to put a package together and trying to bolster our ability to properly clean the gear and also get everyone on board with a official NFPA 1851, which is the technical standard for PPE washing and care. So that includes making sure that gear isn't in service any longer than 10 years, that it is washed properly to a certain standard. So if you look at the actual award letter, there's very specific writing in how it's supposed to take place. Water can't be over 105 degrees. The extracting part has to be under 105 G's of force. The temperature that it's dried at has to be a constant flow of air at a certain amount, and this is to help keep it as well. So I was able to put in for, through the AFG program, what's called a micro grant. So that is a grant that the federal share is under $50,000. It's for specifically for municipalities that have not been approved for a FEMA grant, I believe in 7 years. So we were able to put in for that. $53,900 is the complete amount. Our share would be 10%, which would be the $4,900. and that we're hoping that we can move forward with this process to make sure that all of our personnel, career and volunteer, have the ability to decontaminate their gear as quickly as possible to get it back in service.
So do the firemen and women, do you wash your own equipment, or is there somebody else that does that?
Yes, so it's two parts, right? So currently, right now, there's the career staff have the 2 sets of gear. Volunteers, some have 2 sets, but we're working on making sure everybody has the 2 sets. And what it is if there's an emergency scene that requires it, you would leave your gear, and the next shift would start doing it as you get into the use your second spare set of gear while that, and then the volunteers that don't have a second set, we have a large supply of extra gear that we can then give that as a loaner while they're having their stuff washed and then give it back again. But right now, the only washer is at the central station, and this will give us the ability to have a washer at the central station, the Byram station, the North Street station, and then we would also hope that if the Round Hill project ever comes to fruition, that there'd be a washer dryer there as well, and that would give 2 in the north and 2 in the south of town.
And just to be clear, the grant that you all applied for does cover the purchase of, it looks like the way you described it, does cover the cost of the, or is in the allowable grant usage?
Yes.
And if so, I think, of course, I'm supportive, but I also want to just thank you for taking the initiative of applying for a very micro-specific grant for something of this sort, which I think seems to be only a value add for the department.
That's what we're hoping.
So I'll make just a couple more comments that, just to clarify for the public, that these are for 2 firehouses, Byram and North Street. So it's, one in the south, as you point out, and one in the north part of the town. And the other thing is that it requires a 10%, whatever it is, matching for this grant. And so the town share is $4,900, $4,900. To match the 10% of the 49,000. And so, just so everyone knows what they're approving, this amount too, it's capital, is coming out of the capital non-recurring fund. Just, and so this, even though there's a matching here, because of the size, et cetera, this will not need to go to the RTM, so. Oh. Certainly. Would you like me to wait on Harry's question? So, anyway, so Harry has a question. I wanted to make that, and then, do you have any questions, or before? Nisha, any questions? Okay, Harry.
Were there machines part of the Byram renovation? When were they installed in the firehouse?
So in my research, what I was told was that due to project overruns, it was removed. No, but all of the parts are there, because what happened was when the central station was redone, they'd taken the washer and dryer from that station and they put it in the Byram station. So there's a pad, there's electrical, there's venting, there's sewer, there's everything that you need. It's just that they didn't finish the project by putting in a washer and dryer there.
So we're going to we have a small break. So we'll change our subject ever so slightly, even though we're in the middle of this, since, Leslie has left us just for a minute or two. Charlie, a little while ago, during our little summer break here in August, if you go back to the questions we had in, I believe it was our July meeting for assessor, asking why there were fewer volunteer firefighters using the tax credit program. I don't know if you remember that conversation in our BET meeting. But Charlie went back and he, correct me if I'm wrong here, he went and back to all the volunteers to determine if there are any volunteers that would still like to apply to the program, because Lauren was working, collaboratively with Charlie and the fire department. And, it came back that one of the reasons that there were fewer was because of the requirements of the program. And so during the COVID, these folks didn't go to the firehouse as much and so forth because of the COVID. So therefore, they didn't meet the qualifications. So, but nevertheless, there are good volunteer firefighters. So Charlie did ask, he wants to go back and look at what we have, which I'm just trying to chat while you're gone. So he went back, and this relates, I don't know if you heard about the number of volunteer firefighters that took the credit program. And so he commented that, we need to look at what the requirements are so that if we go through another pandemic, that we don't necessarily eliminate these folks because they couldn't go to the firehouse, because they were concerned, but nevertheless, they were continued to be the volunteer force, and just look at the dollar amount, which I don't think has been adjusted in some 25 or 30 years. And so from my standpoint, this sounded like it would be reasonable. It would mean Charlie would have to go back and understand how you modify one of our, whatever, not a charter, but whatever, where it's documented. And it seemed worthwhile to me for him to explore. Do we agree? And something that he can work on between now and, well, whatever, budget cycle? Does that look positive?
I'm happy to hear more about it. If there's a proposal, sure.
Leslie?
Yeah, no, it's part of the bigger question of what's the trend and what's the challenges we have going forward with continuing with our structure and attracting volunteers, so absolutely.
Okay, great. Nisha, any comments? So anyway, so now we'll take the vote on.
Thank you
we were-
very
we were
much, and
just,
I'm sorry.
No issue. So we have a motion, and it was made by Leslie, and it was seconded by me. And so should we just raise our hands on this one? Those in favor? Okay, 400.
Thank you. And I say routine item.
Oh, yes, that's a routine item, there's no question. Okay, so I think that we have completed everything now.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Charlie. So in our package, Roland, do you want to just comment on, I guess we don't have any Larry, right? So do you want to just comment what you put in the package from Witherall? Oh, I'm sorry?
Roland put in the package, but it was at your request, correct?
Oh, was it my request? I asked for, well, just because we're looking at the drop of the number of stars at Witherall from 5 to 1, look at the revenue stream, how have our revenues changed, year over year, by our two groups. And then, certainly in the last couple months of this, and more importantly, currently, what is our average stay for a rehab resident, and what is the average stay of a long-term care? So it used to be, going back some period of time here, that the average stay of a long-term care person was something like 3.3 years, and that number has dropped. And then a rehab person was generally, in there for a couple of weeks plus for knees and hips and whatever. And I believe that days has dropped. But I just wanted to see, because that will show us, in terms of this, if that is impacting attracting new residents to replace, and how often will we have to do that? So this is what we got.
If to comment on the number of days, the other
Doesn't tell
factor,
us this.
it doesn't tell you the
No,
whole
it doesn't answer our
story.
questions.
There's lots of, because there's
This tells
revenue
us
per
the
day.
census. This
It
tells
tells
us
you-
census.
It tells you census, it tells you, yes, you've got turnover costs, right? But it doesn't tell you
Right.
revenue per day, and it's too high level
Right.
and one metric. So
Right.
I'm not sure what that.
It doesn't, but it's
We
here.
can't
This
really
is
draw
what we got.
conclusions from that.
Right.
Okay.
So so now we get to the economic conditions report, Roland. Now we get to the heart of what we do and how things are happening. So Roland, things are still pretty good, huh?
We had a large sale on the conveyance side. It was a
Can you
40
talk into the microphone? Sorry.
It was a $48 million sale at 777 West Putnam. I don't know which building that is, but it was $48 million, which really drove up the August number there on conveyance.
Wow.
And, you can see the impact of the interest rates. We already have more revenue in the first 2 months than we did in all of last year. And that trend's probably going to continue. On the balance of the revenues, the big changes are taxes are up 6 million, and bridge revenue's down over 4 million just because we don't have any bridge revenue yet. That's just a timing issue. And that's probably the biggest difference is those two items. Higher taxes offset by 0 bridge revenue to date, whereas last year we had over 4. And on the Witherall piece, that was just a timing difference in terms of getting their benefit costs into August. It'll be doubled up in September. On the expenses, it's kind of early to tell what the drivers are on the expenses. The big one is the fire department. They're over last year, and that is because of the retro payment that was made in the first 2 months. A good chunk of that is going to be reversed when we reverse the accruals that they made for the contract increases, which they encumbered at the end of last year. And the same thing with the fire department. The higher costs so far for the first 2 months reflect the new contract in place, which wasn't in place last year. And
The second one, was it the police department or the fire department?
the second one was fire. It's not as big, but it's still
I mean, part of it, when we look at this, expenses are expected to be up over last year
Right.
because there are new contracts and inflation adjustments. And we've budgeted for some, hopefully most of all of that, but we don't know.
the fire is going to be offset by about $600,000 next month when we reverse the accrual from the end of the year. And the benefits are higher. We just have higher pension contribution and OPEB contribution. And other than that, it's kind of early to make comparisons like this.
Roland, what about the IT department? I was surprised to see that.
Well, they had another tranche of capital that we put into operating this year.
Oh, okay. Okay, thank you. So, but back on the revenue side, our building permits are holding up too, huh?
Yes.
So, okay. Any more questions to Roland on this? No? No? Okay.
Pretty early in the year.
So the next thing we have are approval of Budget Committee meeting minutes from July 12th. Laura?
I note there's just one punctuation matter under number 1, executive session. That colon should just be a period. And with that Scrivener change, I move to approve the minutes.
All right, I didn't get there back there fast enough. Can you just,
Just the first item, executive session, the second sentence. Change the colon to a period.
oh, yeah. Okay. Done. We'll do that. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Those in favor?
Laura spoke with
Laura
it.
moved and Leslie seconded. Those in favor? 400. Okay, and so let's just, I'll go on, make just a couple comments here. The budget calendar, I think I sent that out at the end, I can't remember, the end of last week, Saturday, something. Anyway, if you could take a look at that calendar, I think Nisha has, it was designed to work around private school vacations for Rye Country Day and Greenwich Academy, our federal holiday, long weekends, and keeping Christmas and Thanksgiving weeks open, the week of, in front of it. And in there, the only BET meetings that are in our calendar are the completion of the budget cycle. So the public hearing and the decision days are there. So if you could take a look at that in the next few days, couple, whatever, and just get back to me and see if that works out with your respective calendars. And that's for calendar year. And then it's time to get started on budget guidelines, and that work will get done shortly so that we can get it out here, hopefully sometime in September. And if we need to have a meeting, we'll do that. Otherwise, we'll just make sure it gets out there.
I think it would be a good goal. I mean, we may need a special meeting to
We can
talk
do
about
that.
them, because it would be good for the departments to have something before the end of October, clearly at our October meeting, and the BET has to approve them. So I hadn't thought about it in those terms, but I think you're probably right.
Okay. So anyway, we'll work on that soon. It's going to be, this year is going to be much more of a struggle. It looks like our, contractual rates are certainly higher for the BOE in particular, but for all the unions, and I think they're still working on negotiating some one-year contracts. Is that right, fellows? And, our other expenses are going up. Utilities, our contributions to the pension fund and OPEB. That's it. I mean, it's just reality. When I checked earlier today, the regional CIP was not out yet for this area. It's supposed to come out today, but it always comes, the regional ones always come lag, but they come out the same day, so probably by tonight. Or maybe it's there now, I don't know, but it wasn't there earlier. So, you know what I'm waiting for? A motion to.
I'll make the motion to adjourn.
Okay, and so it's 4:03, and Nisha made the motion. Do we have a second? Leslie seconded. And it's at 4:03. Those in favor, aye. 400, huh? Thank you, Roland and Pete, very much. So.